Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 91st level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the level 99 elfmatic Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Monday evening? There's some contention in the chat between you and Sean Capri as to who was first tonight.
Yeah, well, if you ain't first, you're last, and Sean proved it. He was indeed first. But I just want to direct you towards, I still have this shirt, which is the Vita Island shirt from, actually, this is from a while back now, maybe like 2015 now or something like that.
That's an old kind of funny reference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't watch them anymore, but I love this drawing of it. I remember who did it too. I just forgot her name. She's
Fiona McKinnon. Sean shouts her out in the chat.
Fiona. That's it. Yeah. But yeah, I love the Vita so much, so I had to shout it out just now. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Like, the weather is just all over the place here, Garret. First,
weather
it was 27 degrees like 2 days ago, and now it's like
cold.
27 degrees Celsius, Garret. That's like that's close to 80 degrees. Whereas, today it's like down to 7 again, and it's going to be even colder, later tonight. The snow might even be coming back at this point. So it's just like, my sinuses are just like,
don't miss that.
My sinuses are just like, get me out of here. I don't know what's going on here. Please just don't make me live in this hellscape anymore, because I can't take it, Garret. I can't take it.
Let me tell you one thing, Ryan. Moving over here, there's a lot of ups and downs, but one of the major ups is the weather. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's relatively mild compared to like what you get in Texas, what you get in the Northeast. You guys get crazy weather with tornadoes. We just get like some little earthquakes here and there.
Yeah. Don't you miss like tornado season? Being out there, like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God.
There'd be like 5 of them going towards us, and we would just run outside to like film it. Like, we were out there with the tornadoes.
I remember that being a thing when I lived in Texas too, Garret, because that was a thing. So there you go. But anyways, this is the RPG Cave, where we talk about RPGs all the time, except for when we're talking about the weather. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways you can do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right meow over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Come on, what are you doing if you haven't subscribed already, please? And then ding, 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 ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live or when we put up a new video on the channel, including some other things that are coming to the channel soon. You might have seen a certain tease on our Twitter page today. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Look out for that in the future. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to rate us if you haven't rated us already on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or subscribe if you haven't subscribed already as well. And last but not least, if you want the audio for the show a little bit early, or if you want one big master podcast feed with all the Carpool Gaming podcasts or some exclusive content, you can head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Carpool Gaming, just like Jonas Young did, who's actually gone back to being upgraded to a gold member. So a huge shout out to Jonas for supporting us. Jonas, you rock.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my friend. All right, Garret, without further ado, it is time to read from the sacred texts, because we're getting into a topic this week, Garret, that I swore we had talked about already, but then when I went back and went through the notes, I'm like, we didn't do this topic yet, because this is like one of the quintessential like topical, when you have a podcast about a specific genre of games that are story-based, you would think that the topic of our favorite villains would have come up, 90 episodes ago. But here we are, 91st episode of the show. We're finally getting to it and talking about our favorite villains. Of course, as someone like me who, of course, Garret, in choice-based games, I pick all the evil choices. In a way, I'm my favorite villain. Like, I kind of fit in with all the villains that we're going to talk about tonight. But it's also one of the reasons why I like talking about, the antagonists and stories like that, because I feel like it also gives like a certain window into the type of characters that we like, and it's also it's a lot easier. I think it's a lot easier to pick favorite heroes, whereas favorite villains, I think it's a little bit tougher. We've got some common answers tonight that we'll get to with some of our listener questions, but for the most part, I think this is going to be a pretty fun exercise in talking about villainy, Garret. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I actually, thinking about you pitched this topic out, and I'm like, man, it's been a while since I really thought about my favorite villains and how that gravitates towards the games I really like or the RPGs I really like. And I look down my list, I'm like, oh yeah, these are like kind of the top RPGs that I like, and it's really, part of it is because of the villains,
Yeah.
because of the antagonist, and having some type of, reason behind it. So
Yeah. You
yeah,
can't have like a good story in a game without having a good like a good antagonist as well in some way.
for
Like
sure.
it's just hard to
Hmm.
do that. So I'm glad we're going to talk about this because yeah, I think that a good antagonist can really make a story pretty special. So we each just brought a list. I don't know how many Garrett brought, and I brought a whole bunch. We'll just kind of talk about them
Okay,
and kind of go throughout the
sounds
show.
good.
We'll go back and forth like we
Oh,
usually do on the show. So
yeah,
so because I've talked about you're off already, Garrett. I feel like you should probably start us off tonight.
sure.
Give us your first villain you want to give a shout out to. And I should preface as well before we go into this discussion. When it comes to talking about villains and why we like them, it's very tough to not do any spoilers at all for some of these games.
Yeah,
So expect at least mild spoilers, especially because sometimes the spoiler is the fact that who the villain actually is the spoiler sometimes. So
that's true.
just
So I will.
FYI, mild spoilers ahead. Beware.
I will keep it brief because I think a lot of these villains are elusive,
Mhm.
except for one. But I gotta shout this one out because I think this one really blew my mind when I played this game, and it was Fallout New Vegas. I think everyone particularly likes Caesar, which I'm not too sure why. And he's kind of like the main villain in one of the Caesar clan or whatever. During that whole world. But actually, the villain that really stuck out to me, which I didn't know he was like really having a secret plan or not, is Mr. House.
Okay.
Mr. House, controller of the Vegas Strip district or New Vegas Strip, right? And I remember going because Fallout New Vegas, if people don't know, there's kind of like mini factions and quest lines or whatever. Mr. House is one of them. And if you go down his quest line, go down his story, the reveal of his plan and the reveal of him, of what he is very, very cool. And he's actually like has a great background of history behind him and how his motivations with what he wants to do with the world. He basically wants to like kind of be the top dog. He wants to be the top boss of Mojave Desert for sure. He has his own motivations. That makes sense. But there's some choices in there, and I'm like, I was like getting so like goosebumps, like thinking about. I'm like, do I do this or do I do that? And I'll keep it at that because I don't want to get into like really heavy spoilers in this
Yeah.
storyline because I think this really sparked my enjoyment with this game later on. So yeah, Mr. House, a very cool dude, very elusive throughout the whole game until the very end, where he reveals his identity and kind of figures out what he wants to do, in the game. So, anyways, what do you think, Ryan? Mr.
Nice.
House.
I mean, again, we talked about it before. I haven't really played much of New Vegas, so I don't
Mm.
know much about Mr. House. But the way you
Oh,
describe him
okay.
sounds pretty intriguing. It sounds pretty cool. I like where your head's at on this one. Also, Yarden also really likes it as well. Nice one. We're off to a good start, Yarden says as well. As soon as you started talking
Yeah.
about Mr. House, so
I don't want to give out any spoilers because people who have not played Fallout New Vegas or the inevitable Fallout New Vegas remake coming out later this year, of course, um, you got to go through that storyline because I think that's a good one to go down and figure out who he actually is and what choices you can make. There are multiple choices you can do, and it's very similar to like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, where it's like there's I would say 20 different endings or something like that with that game, and Mr. House has like four of them,
Mhm.
and it's I turned out to be like I think I don't want to give any spoilers of Mr. House's deadline, so I'm gonna keep it at that. All right, so
nice,
there
nice.
you go.
That's awesome, man. Well, first up from me, also from a choice-based game, and also it's one of those things where, you know, I would have been wary to pick this one because, believe it or not, 2 of the audience members also picked the same villain, but he's probably my favorite villain in all of RPGs, let alone maybe just one of my favorite villains of all time in a video game. And that's Saren from Mass Effect. You know, he's the kind of the big one of the antagonists in Mass Effect 1. You have a couple antagonists. You have Matriarch Benezia, who's working with Saren. You've also got Sovereign, the Reaper ship that he pilots. And you just got a whole bunch of Geth. So you have a myriad of protagonists to choose from. But what I liked about Saren is he's like a very interesting and kind of like sympathetic character where, you know, he's not necessarily evil on purpose. He essentially learned of a plot of these ancient machines that live out in dark space who want to come and cleanse the galaxy of all organic life. So they do this like every like a couple thousand years or whatever. So he goes to try and stop them on his own because he thinks that the galactic government is just going to laugh in his face when he tries to tell them this plot. And he comes across one of the Reapers themselves, who then indoctrinates him and kind of, you know, takes control of him. So he's like working for the Reapers themselves, the very robots that he tried to save the universe from. He's being controlled more and more throughout the entire experience. And I love like all of his interactions with your main character, Commander Shepard, but also too a lot of the dialogue options that then come from that, because there's a bunch of different, you know, fight variations even depending on your choices. I remember actually when Sean Capri played this game on stream, and he was playing through the whole game, and he got to the part where he was going to the final battle with Saren, and he noticed that there was a way to, if you can talk to him through dialogue choices and just talk him down rather than fighting the final boss if you want to. And I remember when just seeing the look on Sean's face when that happened, he's just like, it literally blew his mind. Just like it did for me when I first played the game, where I was like, oh my God, that's a thing? You can do that in a video game? Like I've always like BioWare had done this before with, you know, Knights of the Republic and Jade Empire, where you can talk to the final boss before the encounter, but you've never been able to like talk them down from, you know, doing the right thing, because then he kind of regains his humanity and ends up, you know, doing like, kind of deciding to turn away from the Reapers and kind of gain a little bit of control back. So, it was like, he's just like a really interesting character. I love kind of learning about him throughout the course of the game. And it's a shame that he was only in the first Mass Effect. Although I do think, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but I do think, you know, the other Mass Effect games have some good villains too. But Saren's just a huge standout. And again, as I mentioned, I'm not alone in this, because I'm going to bring in 2 of our audience members. Number 1, Savoy Prime, who says, one of my favorite RPG villains is Saren from Mass Effect. The hatred for humanity really showing how cold and calculated he could be, but also his internal conflict. Such a beautiful character. And then Sean Capri, of course, says, my favorite villain is always the original villain in any JRPG, and not the here's what's really going on villain that always shows up later. Also, that dude from Mass Effect 1 is really the best villain. And also, everyone in Dragon Age Origins, villains and questable allies alike.
So there's some good ones in Dragon Age, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sean. I think I forgot like most villains in Dragon Age Origins. I did play it like 3 years ago though, so I think it's time for another replay.
I know that there's like the king who I'm blanking on his name, begins with an L. I don't remember him being evil, and then you of course got like the archdemon, like the big dragon at the end. But those are like the 2 villains I gotta remember from Dragon Age.
Yeah. I love the game though. So there you go.
But yeah, gotta give a shout out to my boy Saren. That had to be kind of my number 1. And also, again, the audience kind of agrees. Like, definitely out of all of our submissions tonight, which we'll get through a couple of those. And also, a huge thank you to everyone who wrote in tonight. That was definitely the popular choice as well.
I definitely need to pick up Mass Effect eventually one day.
Yeah. I have a feeling this is going to happen a lot tonight, Garrett, when we go back with some of these, because I feel like this time out of any other nights we usually do the podcast together is the nights where we're probably not going to have too many crossovers of games we've actually played, which will be fun. I always love learning about new characters and games I haven't played yet. So.
So I'm just gonna, preface this to you,
Okay.
Ryan, that I have two villains that share the same name, and
Okay.
I'm wondering if you can figure it out throughout the episode. So I will reveal the second like name villain at the end,
Of
but
course, you should
but
definitely do it that way. Don't reveal it right away.
exactly. So my next one, and I'm gonna keep this one brief because it's I feel like it's one of my favorite villains just because I just don't know him that
Mhm.
much and I need to go back to this game. Um and this is the final boss battle of Route A of Near Automata,
Ooh.
and that's Adam. And Adam is such a when you first like reveal what he is and what he's doing and his motivations behind like he's basically being born right in front of you,
Mhm.
and from there you have to destroy him. And he's so elusive, he's so I don't know where his motivations come from. It's just like I'm trying to piece it together, and as you can tell, I'm still puzzled by it because when you finish Route A, you're just like, what did I just face?
Yep.
I need to figure out what I just faced and like go to Route B and C and D, of course, to figure it out. But like I didn't know if I was beating him or not.
Mhm.
Like every time I was trying to attack him, every time I was trying to like, get the upper hand, I knew I was going in waves, but he still seemed fine. He's just like, I am like a beautiful dancer, just slicing you up. He is, I think he's like kind of this I don't know, like this embryo or this persona of humanity that's been built by like the robots on Earth. That's what I feel like he is. But I want to know more about him
Mhm.
after like that first battle. So I gotta hand it to Adam from Near Automata because that was and the villains from Near Automata is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like the ones in the circus, the robot over there. Yeah, there's many different villains in there that you just figure out like where did these personalities come from, and they kind of speak out for themselves. But
Yeah.
yeah, Near Automata, man, great stuff. Shout out to Adam.
Yeah.
He's a good one. Mhm.
That's a pretty good pick. I didn't really think about Nier Automata when thinking about this topic tonight, but I think you brought up a good point. I remember also the ending of Route A, and I was just like, what just happened? Like what's going on
Yeah.
here? And I'm like, and I of course just like you, I was like, I need to know more. It's like the Starship Troopers meme. Would you like to know more? I was like, yes, I want to press that button
Yes.
because I would like to know
Please.
more.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great pick too, Garrett. Good job.
I need to go back to Route B, but I just actually I grabbed Near Automata on a sale on
Yeah.
Steam, so I just got to go back on my Steam Deck.
Whereas
And,
my memory is not the best with Nier Automata because I played it 5 years ago. Back in
yeah,
2017 is when I
can you
played it.
believe it? That it's been 5 years? No, it's been like almost 6 years
Oh, you're right. No, it
since
was
the
6 years
game
ago then
released.
because yeah,
Yeah,
I played it when it came out in March of 2017.
2017.
Yeah, yeah, that was when I played it that game. So yeah, 6 years ago. Which got
Ooh,
Garrett. Can you believe that Persona 5 is also 6 years old?
I can't believe that either. It blows my mind.
Yeah,
It just and actually like, the timeline between Persona 4 Golden. Persona 4 Golden was 2014, right? 2013?
no, I
It
think it
was like
was
near
2014 because it was the same year as Arena
yeah.
Ultimax came out, which was the
Yeah,
Steam one.
so that was 3 years. And then Persona 5 Royal was 2021,
Yep.
I believe. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So we're getting close.
We're,
Persona
we're
6.
still waiting.
It's coming out, man.
One of these days, Garrett, they'll actually announce that game and we'll finally be able to talk about that game. But I don't know, because like we know that we're pretty sure that Persona 3 remake is actually coming next. Because I mean, come on.
That's
I
true,
saw that
man.
leaked footage. It looked pretty real to me. So
That looks very real, very like promotional video type of it looks like later this year, to be honest with you,
yeah.
looking at the games surrounding it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can see it later this year, which would be weird. You'd have a Persona 3 portable port plus a Persona 3 remake. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, bud. All right,
Yeah, but they're
bud.
going to be very different games though, I think. And so I think that's I think that way, you don't have angry fans coming to you and be like, how dare you change all these things in Persona 3 or make
we'll be
this version
suckers and pay for it.
Well, exactly, because at that point you can play the original one on modern consoles. This is why, as much as I didn't love what they did with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I also know that Final Fantasy VII is right there on my PlayStation 5 or my Series X, and I can play it anytime I want to. So I
think it's smart to, port all of these older games, because if they don't do this, we would just emulate it. The people who would buy these games that are porting it into current consoles or whatever, it's like, we'll find a way. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't matter. So
it's like Jurassic Park. Life finds a way, Garrett. That's how that works.
Life finds a way. Yeah. Emulation finds a way.
Every single time. All right. Moving on. We got to get back on track here, because I got to talk about Garrett's favorite topic in the whole wild world, Final Fantasy. Goodness. So here's the thing. Everyone's probably expecting me to say Sephiroth, Kefka, one of the older villains from Final Fantasy, and those are pretty good villains. But I'm going to tell you, and I've been on the record for saying this before, and I'm going to say it again. Final Fantasy XIV has the best villains in this series. It's one of the reasons
that's right here.
I actually really like the story in Final Fantasy VII is because of how good the villains are. In fact, the villains are so good that not only did I not put any Final Fantasy villains on my list outside of 14, but I have 2 of them from 14 to choose from, and they're both good picks. So right. I'm gonna go ahead and give you my first pick, and then in my honorable mentions I'll kind of give the more obvious one that people listening to this podcast will be expecting me to say, but I'm not going to say this one first. This first one I talk about is Zenos Galvius. He's the prince of the Garlean Empire. He is the main antagonist in the Stormblood expansion, but he also is the main antagonist in the Endwalker expansion as well. So he's like one of the better, one of the higher tier villains in Final Fantasy XIV. What I like about Zenos, first of all, is that in Stormblood he's such a brutal, cold, malicious villain. He will not sweat at all, massacring an entire village or tormenting someone into bending them to his will. I just love just how cold and calculated he is as a villain. But then as you start to get to know him as a character, what separates him from a lot of other villains is his motivations, because he eventually kind of starts to change his ways in the middle of the Stormblood expansion, because at first his motivation was to just, do to impress his father and to, take rule the lands that they've kind of conquered in the Stormblood expansion. But what actually ends up morphing his personality throughout the experience is his first encounter with you, the Warrior of Light, the main character of the story, where he's essentially motivated to, try and have the best battle of his lifetime, because he wants to, climb to new heights and prove that he is the best. And you kind of get the best of him in your first fight, but he can tell that there's more to you than just that. So he kind of, runs away, and he's so throughout the entire expansion, he's then showing up in different random places, trying to challenge you to different battles or to throw more and more powerful enemies towards you, so that as your character grows in experience in the MMO, building up to the final battle against Zenos, you are as powerful as you can be, and he's your equal, and you have this really climactic battle, and it's awesome. So I actually love just the whole buildup of Zenos, just getting to know him. And I know there are some people in the Final Fantasy XIV community who think he's kind of a boring villain, because they just don't really like the cold calculatedness of them. They think he's too similar to the other villains. But again, just getting to know, see his growth and how his motivations change throughout the experience just really kind of turned me around on this villain. And I just think he's one of the best Final Fantasy villains. So, and he's definitely one of the more terrifying ones. He's definitely not the type of person you want to run into in a back alley or anything like that. He's got this massive samurai sword, and he's got this pack with a bunch of other swords that he's collected from dudes that he fought to the death.
Is he General Grievous? Jeez.
He kind of is like General Grievous in a way. He is awesome. And yeah, gotta give a shout out to Zeno Ye Galvis, the Prince of the Garlean Empire from Final Fantasy XIV.
When you say Garlean Empire, I just think of Garlic Empire.
Yeah.
And it's Wow, they definitely hate vampires then.
Or might remind you of Garlic Jr., of course, the antagonist from one of the filler arcs in Dragon Ball Z. So there you go.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great tangent. Wow, that seems like a villain for sure. Would not like to come across that dude
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
Exactly. And there,
Wow.
again, there's more spoilery stuff I can go to because, again, I love the way he's handled in Endwalker, which totally, again, changes his character up. And again, I just find he's like super interesting and cool. So,
I like a villain that's dynamic, man. Like, that's has his own, his or her own motivations or whatever, and goes through their story, and you get to understand them and why the way they are. So,
yeah.
yeah, that sounds cool, dude.
Yeah,
Nice.
those are kind of the villains I kind of gravitate towards as well because I want that, especially because they feel more like real people. Like it's tough to get along like, or it's tough to be like, oh my god, this god I fought at the end of X RPG that was kind of the villain that showed up at the last moment. I really resonate with that villain, or I really like what they did there. Like, it's just to Sean's point, because he mentioned it before. It's just like, and here's what's really going on. Like, yeah, I don't like when games do that much. Like, I like villains that are really fleshed out and you learn about them throughout the course of the game that have like real motivations. And you're going to see that as like a common theme throughout my entire list tonight.
Mm-hmm. Nice, cool, man. All right, so my next one, of course, I gotta loop in Pokemon somehow.
Of course.
And this one was actually very surprising to see. It's a very interesting, probably the most interesting villains out of the Pokemon fandom or whatever. And that is N from Pokemon Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, which I haven't played Black 2 and White 2. I just played Black and White. He is another character that's just kind of like in the sidelines, like throughout the game. And there's like a major kind of like reveal of him. I'm just gonna say it just because this game is from 2007, so it'll be fine, guys. Just
it's also a
through
Pokemon game too. It's just like how many people are playing Pokemon for the story.
Exactly. N is the leader or the king of Team Plasma, who is the evil, Team Rocket like equivalent in this game, and his actually motivation to like do stuff is interesting. He wants to separate between humans and Pokemon, like forever, because he went through a lifetime with Pokemon in relationships, and even though he loves Pokemon, he saw how humanity has treated Pokemon, and it's pretty terrible in certain situations. It's like, this is not the order of things. I want to separate between and have a safe haven for Pokemon away from humans. And that's kind of like his whole motivation of doing what he does with Team Plasma, and going throughout the game. And so I honestly, I mean, you can call him a villain, but honestly, defeating him is like, are you doing a world a favor by defeating him in Pokemon battles? Yeah. I'm not too sure. His full name is Natural Harmonia Gropius. Isn't that a name?
That's a name. Gropius? What kind of name is
Gropius. That? Or Gropius. I'm not too sure. But yeah, man, he is very cool. You actually, throughout the game, you actually get flashbacks of him and like, doing certain scenes. So his character actually develops throughout the game. I would argue, I think a lot of people would argue that Black and White is probably the best Pokemon stories ever told throughout all the games. So yeah, I got a shout out to N, man. He is a very interesting cat for sure. And then he's the final boss at the end. So yeah,
the crazy thing, I have Pokemon Black 2 on my shelf over there.
Of course you do.
But I've never played that game. I've never played that game before. Still have never played Black 2 or White 2 or I played Black and White, but I never played Black 2 or White 2, just like you. So it's just
no.
But it's also like super interesting when you talk about, because yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Again, I wouldn't have thought about it like that, but yeah, you're right. Like, it makes a lot of sense why he would be like a really interesting villain to think about, especially because it's like, again, it really makes you question like what you're doing in the Pokemon games in a way that they never would have made you think about them before. Like you're catching these wild animals and you're keeping them in these small cages. And as you kind of, just collect them in a way, like it really makes you think about that in an interesting way. So I'm glad that you brought them up. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, there you go. That's my third favorite villain.
Nice.
In from Pokemon Black and White.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you referenced the fact that you were talking about an older game, Garrett, because I'm about to talk about a game from 1992. So I'm going way back. Of course, and the best part is, Garrett, I know you haven't played this game, so I'll go as quickly as possible because of course I even got a physical for this because of course we're talking about Lunar the Silver Star this evening because of course it's a Ryan Turford list. I've got to have a Lunar character on here, and I've got to pick Magic Emperor Galien as one of my favorite villains of all time. Now, Galien, he started out, he kind of saved the world, 50 years ago from this big evil force that was trying to, destroy the world. Him and his four friends, he was the wizard of the party. But as his friend Dine sacrificed his powers to save the world, it kind of sent Galien into this depression where he was really sad because it almost felt like his best friend Dine, the hero, was turning his back on him as a friend, and he's like to the point where he thought about Dine is dead because now you're just like a shadow of your former self or whatever. So he kind of gets caught up in his depression and ends up using his powers to try and take over the world. And again, I feel like he's a really interesting villain. I love getting to learn about him. You find out he's not necessarily evil, and there's more to him than that. He's very much a very gray character, despite the fact that he's got an evil sounding name like Magic Emperor Galien, and he's got this evil looking black armor. He looks like the type of person that would be like this very evil, generic evil bad guy, but he's got a ton of layers. And then, so in the Sega CD version, they explore that a little bit, but then when they did the PlayStation 1 version, they really, really, really explored Galien's character a lot more and fleshed it out. And that's what kind of put Galien over the top for me, as far as one of the more sympathetic villains, one of the villains that I can definitely understand and kind of relate to. And again, he's just, I loved just learning more about him in the remake. So got to give a shout out to Galien from the Lunar games. And he actually appears in other Lunar games as well. But I'm mostly just going to reference him from the first game. And again, I'm keeping this quick because most people haven't played these games. It's just me at this point. I don't know anyone else in this community that's played these games, but me.
I don't know either, to be honest with you. The PS1, so is it a PlayStation 1 port, or what did they advertise it as?
It started on Sega CD, and then it came, and then they did a remake of it on Sega Saturn. And then it came to play, and then that same version came to PlayStation 1. And then they did a second remake of it on PSP.
Interesting. Okay, I have the PSP one. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and they really simplified the battle system in the PSP version, and it gives you all the added context stuff that they did in the PS1 remake of it, which is why I think it's actually one of the better versions to play. The PS1 version is actually probably the worst version to play, versus the Sega CD and PSP ones are probably the best versions to play Lunar. So if anyone listening to this who hasn't played the Lunar games before, if I didn't sell you on the Lunar episode, but I'm telling you somehow now, this is available on the Vita. You can play it on your Vita, and it's a pretty good way to play Lunar. Nice. Silver Star Harmony, which is the PSP game. It's really good.
And is it Sega that makes this one?
So it was not Sega. This was Working Designs, which we talked about on our old episode. Yeah. But this was also made by Game Arts, the Japanese company that made the Grandia games as well, which is another old series.
So it's a possibility of this being remade. It is a possibility of an HD version.
Yes and no. Well, yeah, there is, because Gung Ho Games owns the rights to this.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know. I mean, they put Lunar in a survey a long time ago that they're like, what? We have all these franchises. Which one would you like to see get a re-release? And Grandia won the poll, and that's how we got the Grandia 1 and 2 HD collection.
I'm sure Lunar will be later then.
Yeah,
eventually.
But that poll was 5 years ago, Garrett, and I'm still waiting. So I'm one of these days. I've kind of given out hope that these games ever come back at this point, which is too bad because they're really good. Especially Lunar 1 and 2, very, very, very good RPGs. Lunar on Dragon Song on the DS though, that game can go to hell. That game sucks. But the other, God, in that game, Garrett, you get hurt. You lose HP when you run in that game.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's like poison in Pokemon.
Especially because none of that, you move slow as molasses if you don't run. So the game just takes like three times longer to beat if you, plus there's random battles on top of that. So you run into more battles if you don't run, but you lose health if you do, and then still run into random battles. So it's just like, you can't win with that game. It's terrible.
It sounds bad. Anyways.
Yeah.
That's the real villain of this episode.
The real villain, Lunar Dragon Song. That's the real villain tonight, folks.
Exactly.
Garrett, what do you got next? You got any more?
Yes. Here's my next one. And this one really blew my mind at the end as well. Fire Emblem Awakening. Remember that game?
I remember that game.
Yeah, that was a great game. I think I really liked that game because of the gameplay and because of the characters and the heroes, but I can't, I really liked going against whatever this was. What the villain was, you really didn't know till like the very end of this game. I'm just gonna mention the name. I'm not gonna go through like the connections to the game. Grima is the villain's name. He is a very ancient spiritual being that loves to connect to human vessels. And I don't want to go more than that because I think there's a lot to it in Fire Emblem Awakening. But he is, super all powerful, has time on his side, has family bloodline connections going on. And it was like escaped from Fire Emblem for the longest time. Fire Emblem Awakening had so many villains right in front, like decoys after decoy after decoy, and you really didn't know who the villain was till the very end. So I got to give it to Grandma, have the grandmaster plan at the end of the game, and hopefully you did it right. Hopefully you beat the game right.
Yep. Because if not,
there's a way to do it wrong.
Yeah. That's a good one too. I haven't thought again that game. I haven't gone back to it in so long, but man, that's making me want to because that game was really good.
So there you go, Grima from Fire Emblem Awakening. Guys, go play that game. Like,
please.
I know, man, the shop closed, which really sucks, but I really implore you. Hacking is so easy in 3DS. It's not even funny. Just look it up. You'll figure it out. Fire Emblem Awakening's worth the just playing through at least once.
I mean, you can, Garrett, also according to pricecharting.com, can go and buy a physical copy complete in box for $70 Canadian as well.
That's not terrible.
That's not terrible. I expected it to be more. That's why I actually looked it up because I was like, how much is a copy for that?
$70 Canadian is okay. I'm sure you can get it like something on eBay for like 50 or 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like used or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, cart only. If you want just the cartridge, it's actually much cheaper too. Like you can get one for 30.
Yeah, exactly.
Bucks. Yeah. But I imagine as time goes on after the stores close, those prices are going to go up. Like we've seen that trend on all 3DS
That's
games.
True.
So
that's true.
Which is why, like, friendly reminder: if you want 3DS games and you have the extra funds, like now is the time to do it. Like this year, don't like after this year, the price is going to shoot up on all the games. So just definitely.
I looked up eBay 3DSs, and they're pretty expensive. I would say like in the realm of like 200 to 300 USD. You can get a Japanese 3DS if you want to, and yes, you can jailbreak it, but at least there's a way to get it cheaper, and then you can still buy a cartridge.
That's true,
and play through it. Yeah.
I mean, I use that hack all the time with older consoles, Garrett, because a lot of times, if you want to collect Super Nintendo games, as an example, collecting the Japanese Super Famicom versions way cheaper than the Super NES versions for a lot of games, especially RPGs, because those games were basically like Madden over there, where they released in such high numbers that they're going for dirt cheap. Like you can get a copy of Final Fantasy VI on Super Nintendo for like $15 versus the North American version that's like $200. So
wow,
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Interesting.
But moving
So,
on, Garrett, I'm gonna make this
moving
one
on.
quick, but I gotta give this one a shout out because you've probably noticed a theme already, and I don't know if you noticed this when you were compiling your list, because I definitely noticed this because I was like, well, wait a second, all the villains I'm thinking of are all dudes. Like, where are the
They're all
female
dudes.
villains in RPGs?
It's
And
true.
the answer is there's not many. There's not many good ones. First of all,
There's surely not
you
many.
got Zenobia from Lunar, which of course Garrett has no idea what I'm talking about. That's just gobbledygook to him. But
Yeah.
also you've got some minor villains in Mass Effect that are female, but you don't really have like a lot of a lot of central antagonists to a game be female, except maybe like the sorceress from Final Fantasy VIII is another one. But the one that I chose, which is actually one of the actual antagonist, the actual villain of this game, actual factual, is Eve from Parasite Eve. Yes, Ryan is talking about Parasite Eve again, folks. It's happening. We've all been waiting for this moment, and it's finally here. Yes, Parasite Eve is a thing back on the show. Eve, I have to give her a shout out because she's just out there trying to evolve the human race. What's so wrong with that? Evolving the human race into a bunch of, crazy monsters trying to take over New York on Christmas. Like, nothing wrong with that. Like, again, I won't go into it because
Nothing
there's a
wrong
lot of spoilery things that are actually the things that I actually really like about Eve as a villain, because I think she's actually like a really sympathetic character, and it also is kind of like your Pokemon reference, Garrett, where it's like, am I doing the right thing by actually trying to take down this person, despite the fact that she's causing all these bad things to happen in the city. Maybe what she's doing actually isn't wrong. So I actually like that aspect to her characters, and again, I actually want people to play Parasite Eve at some point. That's why I'm not spoiling any of this stuff. But so that's why I want to keep this super short and sweet. Eve from Parasite Eve, huge shout out, not just for being kind of a great RPG villain in general, but also shout out to being a female villain in an RPG, because we just don't get those that often, especially done well.
No, we don't.
And it's something I hope we see more of at some point, because even with modern RPGs, this is not something we really see all that often.
Yeah, no, you're kind of right. I don't have any female villains in my games, and I'm thinking of like a seminal female antagonist. Can think of a handful of games that are not RPGs,
Yeah.
which is like kind of crazy. I'm like, there may be some RPGs I played that has some female villains or antagonists, but they turn good, or they just go off the wayside, or they're just side characters.
Yeah.
They're not the main antagonist.
Yeah, because there's a couple good side ones, like Tales of Arise, for example. One of the 6 villains that are in like the villain circle that you fight in that game. Like there's like a really awesome female villain in that game, but she's not really the central antagonist, and she's barely in the game, so you don't really get to know her in a lot of ways. That's why she didn't really make my list at all. So there's like a couple instances like that. Like that's more the type of thing you see versus being like the main antagonist in RPG, which is again just something I never thought about until tonight putting this list together. Because I'm like,
Cool.
oh yeah, because I'm curious to know like where all the like it was very easy for us to come up with our list of female protagonists. But on the other side of the coin, female villains, very tough to do.
Very, very rough. Yeah. I really hope, just like one RPG would come out as like, this is like a legit badass female villain. And I'm like, heck yeah, I'm ready to dive in and face whatever. Like, that would be so cool to do. But yeah, we'll see.
All right, moving on, Garrett. Is this your final one? Is this the other Adam, or you got more after this?
I have a couple of them. How many do you have? I have 2.
I put 10 down just in case we overlapped. But
Okay,
those ones are going to run through very quick because we're not going to be here all night, kind of thing.
Okay, sounds good. I got 2. Let me go to the second to last one. It is Murok. You ever heard of him? He is from Skyrim, actually. And Skyrim, not known for their its story whatsoever. The main story is let me tell you, it's complete garbage.
There's an evil dragon though, and you go to Valhalla to fight him. It's great.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's like that's the weakest point of Skyrim is the main story. But Murok, he is actually the main antagonist of the DLC.
Okay.
Which is Skyrim Dragonborn. He is the original, the first Dragonborn ever, like ever at all. And he comes back with full ancient power. He's also a priest. And what I love about him is just his character design is so dope. I don't know if you've seen the Dragon Priest's helmets or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They remind me of like, old medieval like medicine mask, the one with the big beaks.
Yeah.
Whatever. But just like chop off the beak. And that's what it looks like. It's just like a mask with some black holes for eyes, and like what his mask is like, it looks like a kind of I don't know how to describe it, like tentacles like around his face or whatever. Very dark, very and he just wants to like, take over the world. Like that's what I love about him. He just comes back and like, okay, you're the latest Dragonborn. I'm gonna destroy you, and I'm gonna just take over the world after I regain my power. That's basically his, and that's why I gotta have to have a villain that doesn't have dynamic change or whatever. He's straight up like, yo, I'm evil, I know it, and I'm gonna destroy everyone. And so I loved this DLC particularly because of the villain. It was very cool, very interesting to see his cult and like different interesting spots like around Solstheim, which was the island that you went around. There's a lot of wacky quests. I love DLC because they bring out the craziest game designs sometimes, and the villain design itself too. The final battle was I didn't really care for it because he had to do a lot of dragon riding, which kind of sucked. But other than that, I really do enjoy the villain's character and the villain's motivation overall. Just like, hey, I'm a badass and I'm just gonna take over the world. I'm like, cool, sounds good. I'm gonna try to defeat you then. So Murok from Skyrim is one of my favorite villains.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. That sounds cool. Yeah, I never finished that DLC, so I never got to see him rock the end, unfortunately, which is too bad because he sounds really cool. But yeah, I know the mask you're talking about because it's on like the cover of the DLC's like art on the store. So I can definitely I'm picturing it in my brain. But that's pretty cool. I wasn't expecting a DLC villain tonight, so that's actually really interesting too. But
yeah,
Garrett, I'm good, which means of course I was actually surprised you didn't pick this one that I'm about to talk about because I had this one in my honorable mentions thinking that there's no way Garrett would miss this one.
Oh, okay. I think I know which one.
Because I know how much of a fan of Borderlands you are, Garrett. But Handsome Jack is one of the best villains in any video game. Like, come on. He's so good. Like, the way he just taunts you throughout that entire game. He's really funny. Like, he's a comedic villain. His boss fight, is okay. It's not great, but just the way you interact with Handsome Jack throughout the entire game, like chef's kiss to Randy Pitchford and Gearbox for coming with Handsome Jack. That guy is awesome. I love Handsome Jack. He's a great villain.
I definitely agree. I had him in my honorable mention too, just because Handsome Jack. Borderlands. I was like, okay, is it really an RPG? It's like I say it's an RPG.
I mean, it's an action RPG in the same way Diablo is.
That's true. Very true.
It's just first person with guns instead of third person with melee weapons.
Handsome Jack, you kind of like meet him in the beginning, and you instantly tell like you hit it off with the guy. He's so comedic throughout the whole campaign, and that's just how the game is. Very humor comedic style. But as you get throughout the game, it gets very, I wouldn't say deep, but very emotional.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those comedy / emotional type of games. And, like, all throughout, I want people to play this game, Borderlands 2, because it's still, I mean, personally, I still think it's the best Borderlands game. Out of all the Borderlands and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands games or whatever, it is the best Borderlands game. And I I really implore people, like, Handsome Jack is the best villain
Yeah.
ever. Like,
Yeah,
he's
like,
hilarious.
he's definitely like out of all the video game villains I know, he's like one of the best across all game genres, not just RPGs. So I actually think
Yes.
Handsome Jack's great. So I'm glad we got to talk about it a little bit because yeah, you're right. Like Borderlands kind of again is on the borderlands of whether it's an RPG or not. See what I did there? It's
For
on the
sure.
line. But at the same time, I would consider it an RPG because it's RPG enough, I think, where we would qualify it for this list. And Handsome Jack, again, if we do, gotta give it a shout out. I think he's great. But Garrett, give me your last one, and then I'll run through my honorable mentions real quick.
Sounds good. Can you guess which one it is that has the same name as my previous villains?
Adam, who's another Adam that I know of?
Is there any Adam, you know? There is some Adams, I guess, but I don't know about Adam.
My mind's a blank because I keep thinking about Adam from Metroid Other M, and that's not who you're talking about.
That's not who I'm talking about. It is N from Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Of course I'm not going to know that. It's Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Garrett. Come on.
I'm just very surprised I had two N's in this list of villains. I'm not going to spoil this one. This one is for people out there. It's a very recent game, so I don't want to say anything more than N really crushed me in this game. I love his character design. I love his motivation throughout the story. And also all the villains actually in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is actually top notch. I don't particularly care about the main antagonist so much in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I feel like he's a little too static for what he is, and he speaks in riddles, and I'm just like, I'm fine with it. The rest of the villains though. It's so good. It's like chef's kiss. Like it made me like it tear jerked me so hard. Like these villains. So, and has got to be the number one though out of all of them. Really, I don't want to say anything more because
especially because it's a recent game too. So I mean, people still need to go play it. I think. Like I haven't played it yet. One day I'll play it, Garrett. I think. I don't know. I have a copy on my shelf. I have the collector's edition. I haven't even opened it.
Yes, you do.
But
yes, you do.
One of these days.
But yeah, I'll just keep it at that for N.
Okay.
I don't want to say anything more.
Yeah. And I should have guessed because I'm like, Garrett hasn't said Xenoblade Chronicles yet, so I imagine a Xenoblade Chronicles character is coming at some point. But we'll see. Well, let me run through my list real quick of honorable mentions. Just the ones that almost made the cut. Number one, of course, Emmett Selk from Final Fantasy XIV as well. The other one, probably the one that people like the most, actually. He's like the kind of the crowd favorite villain from Final Fantasy XIV. He's the villain in the Shadowbringers expansion. And he's just, he's a floating mass that just wants to bring back all his dead friends that sacrifice themselves to summon the god of death in order to stop the world from being destroyed. He's not a bad guy, I swear. He's just evil and manipulates people to cause all of the worlds to destroy themselves. I'm sure he's not that bad of a guy at all. But people really like MXL. I like MXL too a lot. Like him and Xenos are like again two of the best like RPG villains. Like they're definitely like the two best Final Fantasy villains, and they're in the same game. So it's just weird to me how that works. But then I've also got Xeon from Shining Force 2. He's like the big demon that at the end of the game. But he also kind of like Handsome Jack. The second that Xeon gets revived, you actually get like you run into Xeon, and he kind of again like taunts you throughout your experience and stuff like that. So again, he's like a really interesting character, and more he's got more depth than like RPG villains from the 16-bit era. So that's one of the things I had to give him a shout out for. Harbinger from Mass Effect 2. Again, this isn't really a specific person that you fight, because Harbinger's whole thing is he's a Reaper, which is one of the ancient machines bent on destroying the civilization, but he takes over the minds of people, and you have to fight him through other characters. But you can tell it's him because you hear the words like assuming direct control, and it's like that phrase is ingrained in my brain from how many times you hear that in million, different fights that you fight throughout the game. And again, he's like taunting you while you're fighting him, and he's like, "This hurts, Shepard. You could just give up anytime you want to." Like, I just love that whole aspect to his character. So got to give Harbinger a shout out. Lynx from Chrono Cross. This is the cat man that you fight throughout the game. He's kind of Surge's main antagonist. And for some reason or another, Lynx is hell-bent on killing Surge in every single timeline across the entire multiverse. That's just his mission for some reason. And when you finally find out why and how it connects to Chrono Trigger, blew my mind the first time I played it. So again, that's a game people need to play. Lynx is an awesome villain. And then my last one was Darth Revan from Knights of the Old Republic. And I don't want to say anything more because that's a giant spoiler, and it spoils one of the best parts of that game. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So there you go. There's my list of honorable mentions as well. We gave a lot of good villains tonight, I think, Garrett. I think we got a pretty good list here. Yeah.
We got an evil villain league going on here.
Yep. Of course, we all know the true villain is just me, Ryan Turford, making all the evil decisions. Just because I nuked Megaton, and everyone in the chat for some reason likes to yell at me about that. Look, then Megaton people had it coming, okay?
Actually, it's pretty cool to nuke it just because of going back to it. It's like pretty interesting to see the wasteland that's in there.
So, fun fact. When I nuke Megaton, there's usually no people there anyways, because I usually, one of the first things I do when I go to Megaton, I kill the sheriff because I want to steal his hat at the beginning of town, and I usually murder everyone in Megaton anyways. So when it comes to the point to blow up the nuclear bomb, the only one who's left is the person who's left there when you nuke Megaton in the story. So it all works out. So the nuke doesn't kill anyone, I kill all the people. That's how that works. Anyways, Garrett.
Wow.
Moving on. Evil. We got, of course, some more listener suggestions to kind of round out the show tonight. We're going to start with Quagmire, who, of course, is trying to, play to Garrett Bland's heart right here. Jin and Malos from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I like how they're relatable. You can see why they're doing what they're doing. And to a certain extent, it all makes a lot of sense. But to the odds that they go to is a bridge too far. Any villains like them that fall in the gray area instead of black and white Saturday morning cartoon is good in my book. And yeah, like, even though I haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, your description, Quagmire, is exactly like the type of villain I'm kind of looking for too. So I'm glad we're kind of on the same page, even though I've never played this game. Garrett, what do you have to say about this one though? Because again, I haven't played all of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 yet.
I definitely agree. These two are very good. I especially love Jin. He is more anti-hero, but you fight him a lot, like, throughout the game. So, yeah, Jin and Malos, pretty top-notch. I just think Malos is a jerk, just in general. Like, even though, he's a moral gray person. Yeah, right. He's a jerk, though, throughout the game. So, I'm fine killing him. But Jin's a hard one. Anyways, yeah, good one. Good picks, Quagmire.
Yeah. Next up, we got Drellesh, who says, Gaunter O'Dim is perhaps the best video game antagonist ever created, sometimes also called the Master Mirror or Man of Glass, was a powerful individual creating pacts with people in exchange for their souls and being able to control time with the mere clap of his hands, seen in The Witcher 3's DLC. Which would explain why this name meant nothing to me, because I played 50 hours of The Witcher 3, never played the DLC, so I had no idea who this person was.
I'm looking him up. I know this guy.
While you do that, I'll move on to the next one because I know you haven't played this next game, Garrett. So I know you won't have anything to say about that. So Delroy says it's Luca Blight from Suikoden 2, without a doubt. I won't spoil things, but during his time as a big bad, he's been able to make you truly despise him. There's simply no relating to him or redemption for him. People, please play this game, which we're going to be able to, because that Suikoden collection's coming soon, Garrett, because we saw it got rated. So I imagine it's going to be out pretty soon, which I'm excited for, because I haven't played these games either.
So, I know Gaunter O'Dim. I agree with you, Drellesh. Very, very good antagonist. But Ryan, I'm just going to let you know, you did meet him in Witcher.
Oh.
You just don't remember.
I just don't remember, I guess.
He is very hidden in the game, and it's so cool how they reveal the DLC. You're like, you're that guy. And then he goes into the whole DLC. Gaunter O'Dim is top notch. Good pick, Drellesh. That's a good one. I
Nice.
really like that one.
Yeah. Again, it just shows how much I remember about the 50 hours I spent with Witcher 3 back in 2015. So, 8 years ago at this point. That's almost a 10-year-old game, Garrett, Witcher 3.
You can play on the Steam Deck, 60 frames. It's beautiful.
Well, you played on the Switch, though, too.
Yeah, and with beer glass goggles, definitely.
All right. Next up, we got Nagachaka, who actually has a question here along with his suggestion. Nagachaka asks, who is the greatest villain from an action RPG, and why is it the antagonist from Nier Replicant? Make sure you don't spoil the story when you answer the question, too. Well, the thing is, Garrett, we already talked about action RPGs with the favorite villains we got here, so, I'm just going to say Saren from Mass Effect because Mass Effect's an action RPG, okay? And he counts.
Mm-hmm.
Or Handsome Jack, too. He's also a really good one from an action RPG, too.
Yeah, Handsome Jack's great. And I had Mr. House and Adam.
Yeah.
I have not played Nier Replicant, though.
Yeah.
So
I played it but never finished it. So I don't really have much to say about that one either, unfortunately. Sorry, Nagachaka. I know we're letting you down here. In fact, I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't have the same answer as you with Nier Automata's villain.
Yeah.
All right.
What are you going to do?
Last suggestion tonight comes to us from Skycatcher Gaming, who says, I'm going to go with Sephiroth, even though I don't know much about Final Fantasy VII. He kind of seems like an ass. I also think that the Fire Emblem series has some pretty repugnant villains as well. Because, yes, Garrett, actually, this is the time where you and I will talk spoilers about Three Houses real quick, Garrett, because I got to mention this.
Go for it.
The best villains in Fire Emblem Three Houses are all the other houses besides the Black Eagles, because, come on. The Black Eagles are the true heroes of Fire Emblem Three Houses. And if you know, you know. If you know, you know.
1000%. I love Team Black Eagle. Let's go.
Let's soar, buddy.
I was cheering throughout that whole game. So, good one.
And that's the thing. Like, I know a lot of people say Sephiroth for Final Fantasy VII is one of their favorite villains. I just don't see it with him because, again, he's kind of what one of the suggestions talked about. He's kind of like a very one-dimensional character. You don't really get to see him throughout a lot of the game. I definitely think, like, it's good that in Remake, their approach to Sephiroth is they're having him appear throughout the experience to kind of, give context to why, why Cloud hates him so much, but also why we should care about Sephiroth. So I like the direction they're going with Remake, but if you look at the original Final Fantasy VII, just Sephiroth is just such a flat villain. That's why I just don't really think he's like such a great villain to me anyways. But anyways, Garrett, I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. Yeah. But before we go, Garrett Plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at Bland Explosion. You can also find me on Discord in the RPG Cave channel of Carpool Gaming. That's where I normally am active. And I see you, hooligans. I see you, Kevin, the Muffin Man, in your Cold Steel series trails, whatever games.
Well, he's already finished them all. Like the thing's over, Garrett. He's already finished all the games now in like 2 weeks.
Jeez, in his hatred towards Dragon Quest, I see you. I'm also active, in Play Some Video Games podcast channel. I'm like very active in they have this game portable. Hold on, it's like game PC portable channel where it's just all about PC portable handhelds, whatever you want. It could be Steam Deck, it could be anything else though. It could be like Retroid or whatever. We go really ham in that channel. Like we're pretty active. So if you're interested, head over there. I'll introduce to you all the Steam Deck hacks for sure.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's exciting. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. Plugs for this week. Number one, the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are out this week, and I might have a certain package coming in the mail that I might unbox on the channel this week. So if you're into the Pixel remasters and you want to see what comes in a collector's edition that goes on eBay for about $1,200 right now, I will open one on camera this week. So look out for that on the channel.
What's the retail price on that?
It was like $300.
Yeah, that's crazy. It just tripled in price. Like,
yeah. Well, I think they must have made like 300 of them.
Oh, it's the collector's edition on Square Enix's store, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, and also, of course, we teased something cool on our Twitter, of course, twitter.com/carpoolgaming, that we're going to tell you all about on Monday of next week. So stay tuned for that as well. You also find us right here on YouTube, youtube.com/carpoolgaming. And of course, podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 91st level of the RPG Cave. Only 8 more levels until level 99. And we're out. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.